What if I told you you've been fighting the wrong battle your entire life, not against people, not against society, but against yourself? Think about the last time something shook you, an insult, a betrayal, a failure. Did you take it personally? Did it consume your mind for hours, maybe even days? Now, ask yourself this: did your reaction change anything, or did it only drain you? Most people live like leaves in the wind, carried away by emotions they never learned to control. They think strength is about fighting back, proving a point, demanding respect. But true strength, it's the man who walks away from chaos with a calm heart. This is what Stoicism teaches. Not emotionlessness, but mastery. Not suppression, but transformation. And today, I'll show you the 12 habits that separate the weak from the unshakable. These are the habits that will make you untouchable, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. By the end of this video, you will no longer be a prisoner of your emotions. You will be the master of them. So let's begin. 1. Be honest with your emotions. The room was silent, but inside his chest, a storm raged. Alex sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone, rereading the message over and over again. We should take a break. Just 5 words, yet they cut deeper than he ever expected. His first instinct was to dismiss it, to tell himself it didn't matter, that he was fine, that he didn't care. He buried himself in work, went out with friends, acted like everything was normal. But the truth was, it wasn't. The pain lingered, creeping into his thoughts when he least expected it. It wasn't until a close friend asked, "Have you even allowed yourself to feel this?" that he realized he hadn't. He was running from his emotions, not facing them. This is how most of us live. We've been taught that emotional strength means ignoring pain, that resilience is about suppressing sadness, frustration, or anger. We tell ourselves we don't have time for weakness, that feeling deeply is a flaw, that if we just keep moving, we'll outrun the discomfort. But the more we suppress, the more we suffer. Pain that is ignored does not disappear. It festers, influencing our actions, our moods, and even our relationships. We lash out at others without knowing why. We sabotage opportunities because of unaddressed fears. We build walls so high that even we forget what's behind them. In the end, we become strangers to our own emotions, disconnected from the very things that make us human. The Stoics never taught that strength comes from denial. They understood that true resilience begins with acceptance, accepting reality as it is, including our own emotions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. And this you have the power to change." Meditations. Emotional pain is not a weakness, it is information. It tells you what matters to you, what wounds have yet to heal, where growth is needed. When we resist emotion, we resist self-awareness. But when we acknowledge what we feel, without exaggeration, without self-pity, we regain control. The key is simple yet profound. Name your emotions, but do not become them. Instead of saying, "I am broken," say, "I feel hurt right now, and that is okay." Instead of suppressing anger, ask, "What does this anger reveal about what I value?" Instead of numbing sadness, allow yourself the space to process it. Journaling, meditation, or simply sitting in silence with your thoughts can transform your relationship with your emotions. With time, they lose their power over you, not because they disappear, but because you learn how to face them without fear. Imagine a life where emotions no longer control you, where sadness can exist without overwhelming you, where anger can arise without consuming you. This is not emotional weakness, it is mastery. It is the ability to experience the full depth of human emotion and still remain steady. The moment you stop running from your emotions, you stop being a prisoner to them. You become free. 2. Learn to pause before reacting. The argument erupted like a sudden storm. Voices clashed, tempers flared, and amidst it all, Sarah felt her patience snap. Her younger brother had once again borrowed her car without asking, this time leaving it on empty. She could feel the words forming, sharp and biting, ready to unleash her frustration. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone to send an angry message. But then a strange thought surfaced. What will this accomplish? We've all had moments like this. A situation that feels unfair, a person who pushes our limits, an injustice that begs for immediate retaliation. Our instincts scream for action. We want to correct, to confront, to make the other person feel the frustration we're experiencing. But how often does this impulse actually serve us? More often than not, our immediate reactions escalate the problem. We say things we regret. We turn minor issues into lasting conflicts. And most importantly, we let someone else dictate our emotions. Why do we react this way? The answer lies in how our brain is wired. When faced with stress or provocation, our amygdala, the brain's alarm system, triggers an instant response, treating even small inconveniences as if they were life or death situations. This is why we lash out, defend, or retaliate without thinking. But what if we could override this impulse? What if, instead of being controlled by emotion, we could master the pause? A Stoic understands that power lies in restraint. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Meditations. This means that no matter how unfair, frustrating, or insulting a situation may be, the way we respond is always within our control. And that control begins with a moment of stillness, a pause long enough to choose wisdom over impulse. How can you apply this in your own life? The next time anger or frustration rises, resist the urge to react instantly. Take a breath. Ask yourself, will my reaction make this better or worse? Will I regret what I say? If the answer isn't clear, stay silent. Delay your response. Walk away if necessary. This isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength. Now, imagine living this way. No longer easily rattled, no longer pulled into unnecessary conflicts. Instead of being controlled by emotions, you control them. You gain the respect of others, not because you dominate, but because you remain unshaken. This is the power of the pause, and those who learn it own their emotions instead of being owned by them. 3. Mastering the feeling of rejection. David stared at his phone, his heart sinking. The message was short, cold, and final. "We've decided to go with another candidate. Best of luck." He had poured months into preparing for this job, convinced it was his perfect opportunity, and yet, just like that, he was dismissed. His mind spiraled. Was I not good enough? Did I say something wrong? Am I just fooling myself? The rejection felt personal, like a verdict on his worth. Rejection cuts deep. Whether it's a job denial, a breakup, a friend pulling away, or an idea being dismissed, it triggers something primal in us. We crave belonging, recognition, and validation. So when someone turns us down, it feels like a wound to our identity. It's why so many people fear putting themselves out there. They equate rejection with failure, with being unworthy, with being less. But here's the truth. Rejection is not about you. It's about fit, timing, and circumstances beyond your control. The world does not owe you acceptance, and the sooner you grasp this, the sooner you free yourself. The reason rejection stings is that we see it as a loss of control. We believe that if we try hard enough, say the right things, or prove ourselves, we can force a positive outcome. When that doesn't happen, we feel powerless. But what if rejection wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace? What if, instead of seeing it as a door closing, we saw it as redirection, a push towards something better suited for us? A Stoic does not measure their worth by the opinions of others. Epictetus reminds us, if someone speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself against their words, but instead respond with, yes, and you don't even know the half of it. Discourses. This is not cynicism, it is strength. It is the understanding that external validation is irrelevant to your inner peace. A rejection does not define you. It reveals an opportunity to grow, to refine your path, to build resilience. How do you master rejection? First, separate your worth from the outcome. If someone rejects your work, your ideas, or even your presence, it is not a statement about you. It is a reflection of their perspective, their needs, or their limitations. Second, reframe rejection as feedback. Instead of taking it personally, ask, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? Third, desensitize yourself. The more you expose yourself to rejection, the less it will control you. Approach life with the mindset that rejection is inevitable, but suffering over it is optional. Now imagine if rejection no longer held you back. If instead of shrinking, you grew. If instead of fearing a no, you welcomed it as part of the process. That's emotional strength, not avoiding rejection, but facing it head-on, knowing that every closed door is simply pointing you toward the right one. 4. Focus on what you can control. The rain poured relentlessly as Maria sat in traffic, gripping the wheel. She was already late for an important meeting, and every red light, every honking car, felt like a personal attack. Her frustration boiled over. Why is this happening to me? Why is the universe against me today? The more she dwelled on it, the angrier she became. By the time she arrived, she was so tense and frustrated that she stumbled over her words, making a poor impression. The day had spiraled out of control, not because of the traffic, but because she had given away her power to something she could never change. We all do this. We agonize over things outside our control, other people's opinions, unexpected setbacks, the economy, the weather. We waste energy fighting reality, as if our frustration could bend the world to our will, but it never does. Instead, it drains us, keeping us trapped in a cycle of stress and helplessness. This illusion of control is one of the greatest sources of human suffering, yet the solution is simple. Stop trying to control the uncontrollable. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus taught, some things are up to us and some things are not. If you try to control what is not yours to control, you will only suffer. Discourses. This truth is liberating. The moment you stop fixating on things beyond your influence, you reclaim your energy for what truly matters, your actions, your mindset, your response. Think about the last time something didn't go your way. Did worrying change the outcome? Did overthinking solve the problem? Probably not. Now imagine if, instead of stressing over what you can't control, you focused entirely on what you can. Instead of being angry at the rain, you brought an umbrella. Instead of worrying about someone else's approval, you improved yourself. Instead of fearing failure, you focused on preparation. Suddenly, life becomes simpler, lighter. Not because the world changed, but because you did. So how do you apply this? First, whenever stress creeps in, ask yourself, Is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. Second, redirect your energy. Pour your focus into what you can influence, your habits, your choices, your resilience. Finally, practice mental discipline. Train yourself to recognize when you're wasting energy on the external and shift it inward instead. Imagine a life where nothing outside of you could shake your peace, where no delay, no rejection, no chaos could rattle you, because you only focus on what you can change. That is true power. The world will always be unpredictable, but your mind doesn't have to be. Once you master this, you don't just survive the chaos, you rise above it. 5. Cultivate the spirit of gratitude. Ethan sat alone in his apartment, staring at the rejection email on his screen. Another opportunity lost, another door slammed in his face. His mind spiraled. Why does life always work against me? Why do others succeed while I struggle? He scrolled through social media, watching old classmates celebrating promotions, vacations, new relationships. The weight of comparison crushed him, feeding the belief that he was falling behind. Frustrated and bitter, he failed to notice the simple blessings around him: the roof over his head, the meal on his table, the friends who supported him. We live in an era of abundance, yet so many feel empty. We chase more, thinking happiness is just one achievement away. We measure our worth against others, always seeing what we lack rather than what we have. This mindset keeps us trapped in dissatisfaction, blind to the richness already in our lives. The paradox of gratitude is that it does not come naturally. It must be practiced. Left unchecked, the human mind defaults to scarcity, focusing on what's missing instead of what's present. But what if you trained yourself to see differently? The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire through war, betrayal, and hardship, still found time to write, "Do not indulge in dreams of what you lack. Instead, consider what you have and how much you would miss it if it were not there." Meditations. This is the essence of gratitude, not waiting for perfection to feel content, but finding joy in what already exists. Imagine losing everything you take for granted today: your health, your loved ones, your ability to walk, speak, or see. How much would you wish to have it all back? And yet right now, you possess those gifts. Why wait until lost to appreciate them? Gratitude is not about denying hardships. It is about shifting focus. You can acknowledge challenges while still recognizing abundance. So how do you cultivate gratitude? Start by writing down 3 things you're grateful for every morning. They don't have to be grand. Perhaps a conversation with a friend, the warmth of sunlight, or a lesson learned from a mistake. Second, reframe struggles. Instead of resenting difficulties, see them as opportunities for growth. Lastly, express appreciation. Tell the people in your life how much they mean to you, because nothing is promised. Picture a life where you wake up already feeling rich, not because you have everything, but because you see everything. Where your happiness isn't postponed to some future achievement, but is deeply rooted in the present. This shift does not just change your mood, it transforms your life. Because in the end, gratitude is not just a feeling, it is a way of seeing the world. 6. Embrace failure as part of the process. The mountain air was crisp as Daniel tightened his climbing harness. He had spent months preparing for this, scaling a sheer rock face that had defeated him twice before. His muscles ached, his hands were raw, and yet he reached for the next hold. Then, without warning, his foot slipped. A heartbeat later, he dangled mid-air, secured only by the rope that kept him from plummeting to the ground. His breath was heavy, frustration burning in his chest. Another failure. Another fall. A voice inside him whispered, "Maybe this climb isn't for you. Maybe you'll never make it to the top." Failure has a way of shaking us. Whether it's in sports, business, relationships, or personal goals, falling short stings. We're taught from a young age that success means moving forward without setbacks, that those who fail must lack talent, intelligence, or drive. But is that really true? Or is failure just an integral part of mastery? The reason failure feels so crushing isn't just because of the setback itself, but because of how we interpret it. Most people view failure as a dead end, proof that they weren't good enough. But the truth is, failure is data. It's feedback, not a final sentence. A child learning to walk doesn't quit after falling a few times. They instinctively get up and try again. So why do we, as adults, let failure paralyze us? The Stoics understood that setbacks were not personal attacks from the universe, but simply part of life's natural order. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who faced countless military defeats and political betrayals, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Meditations. In other words, obstacles, including failure, are not meant to stop us. They are the path forward. So how do we apply this? First, detach your emotions from the event. Failing at something doesn't mean you are a failure. It means you are in the process of learning. Second, shift your focus from outcome to improvement. Instead of seeing failure as a loss, view it as a training ground. Every mistake refines your skills. Every setback sharpens your strategy. Lastly, embrace the fall. Like Daniel on the mountain, if you see failure as part of the climb, rather than proof that you should give up, you develop resilience that can't be shaken. Picture a life where setbacks no longer discourage you, where each failure fuels your growth instead of crushing your spirit. Imagine how unstoppable you'd be if you saw every fall not as an ending, but as an invitation to rise stronger. The ones who succeed aren't those who never fail. They're the ones who learn how to climb, fall, and climb again. 7. Building endurance. The wind howled through the frozen landscape as Michael's breath came in ragged gasps. His legs burned with every step, the weight of his pack digging into his shoulders like iron shackles. He had been hiking for hours through the blizzard, each step a battle against exhaustion. The voice in his head screamed at him to stop, to turn back, to surrender. But he didn't. He pushed forward, not because it was easy, but because he knew this moment of pain, was what would make him stronger. Endurance is not built in moments of comfort. It is forged in adversity, in the moments where giving up feels like the only option. We all face trials, long work hours, emotional turmoil, unexpected loss. Life will test us again and again, but those who endure are not the ones who never struggle. They are the ones who refuse to break under the weight of struggle. The reason most people collapse under pressure is simple. They mistake pain for a sign to stop. When discomfort arises, they believe something is wrong, that they are weak, incapable, or that life is unfair. But discomfort is not the enemy. It is the fire that tempers steel, the resistance that strengthens a muscle. The Stoics understood this well. They trained their minds to see hardship not as suffering, but as opportunity. Epictetus once said, "Difficulties show a person's character. Therefore, when trouble arises, remember that you are being tested. The storm will pass, but you must stand firm." Discourses. The true test of endurance is not whether you avoid hardship, but whether you can stand in the storm and remain unshaken. So how do we develop true endurance? First, reframe struggle. When hardship comes, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, ask, "How is this shaping me?" Second, train your resilience like a muscle. Push yourself into discomfort daily, whether through physical challenges, delayed gratification, or mental discipline. Lastly, embrace voluntary hardship. The more you expose yourself to controlled difficulty, the less the chaos of life will shake you. Imagine a version of yourself who does not crumble under pressure, a version who stands firm while others fall, who faces pain without fear. That person is not born, it is built, and the only way to build it is to endure. The next time you are tested, remember, this is your training ground. This is where strength is made. Will you embrace it? 8. Envisioning the worst. The moment Jack's phone buzzed, a cold sweat broke out on his skin. The email's subject line read, "Regret to inform you." His heart pounded as he clicked on it. The words blurred together, another rejection, another door slammed shut, another opportunity lost. His stomach churned with anxiety. What now? He had placed all his hopes on this job, convinced it was his ticket to stability. And now, just like that, it was gone. A single thought consumed him. I can't handle this. But what if Jack had been prepared for this moment? What if, long before opening that email, he had already rehearsed this exact outcome in his mind? Would the sting of rejection still have crushed him? Or would he have faced it with the quiet resilience of someone who had already made peace with uncertainty? Most people fear the unexpected. They avoid thinking about worst-case scenarios because they believe it will invite negativity into their lives. But in doing so, they leave themselves defenseless against reality. The truth is, bad things will happen. You will face loss, failure, and disappointment. The question is not if, but when. And when that moment arrives, will you crumble under the weight of shock, or will you be prepared? The Stoics had a practice for this, premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. It is the habit of mentally rehearsing misfortune before it arrives, not out of pessimism, but out of strength. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived them coming beforehand." Letters to Lucilius. By picturing adversity before it strikes, you strip it of its ability to paralyze you. You train yourself to respond rather than react. How can you apply this? Each morning, take a moment to ask yourself, what could go wrong today? Imagine losing a deal, being insulted, making a mistake. Then ask yourself, if this happens, how will I handle it? Visualize your calm response, your ability to adapt. This is not dwelling on the negative. It is building resilience. Just as a soldier trains for battle before stepping onto the field, you must train your mind for life's uncertainties. Now, picture yourself living this way, no longer afraid of failure, no longer rattled by setbacks. When misfortune comes, as it always does, you will not be caught off guard. You will meet it with steady hands, a clear mind, and the quiet confidence of someone who has already lived it, who has already survived it. This is true emotional strength, and it begins with seeing the storm before it arrives. 9. Talking to yourself. The room was silent, except for the sound of Liam pacing back and forth. He had just received the email, another rejection. The opportunity he had spent months preparing for had slipped away. Frustration boiled inside him. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should just stop trying. Then something shifted. He caught his reflection in the window and almost instinctively whispered, "No, this is not the end. I've been here before, and I've risen every time. Why should this be any different? His words, spoken to himself, didn't change the situation, but they changed him. Most people underestimate the power of self-talk. They let their thoughts run wild, filling their minds with doubt, fear, and self-criticism. But what if the words you tell yourself are just as important as the words you hear from others? Imagine if your inner voice was not your harshest critic, but your greatest ally. Studies in psychology confirm that the way we speak to ourselves directly shapes our confidence, emotions, and resilience. Yet, so many of us use our inner dialogue to tear ourselves down rather than build ourselves up. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them." Discourses. It is not events that shape us, but how we interpret them. And the way we interpret them starts with the way we talk to ourselves. If you constantly tell yourself, "I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed," then your mind will believe it. But if you train yourself to think, "This is a challenge, but I am capable. I've survived worse. I will grow from this," then you begin to rewire your brain for strength instead of weakness. So how do you take control of your inner dialogue? First, become aware of it. Pay attention to the words you tell yourself daily. Would you say those things to a friend? If not, why say them to yourself? Second, reframe negative thoughts. Instead of "I failed," say "I learned something valuable." Instead of "I'm not good enough," say "I'm improving every day." Third, speak to yourself out loud. When you feel overwhelmed, say encouraging words to yourself as if you were speaking to a close friend. It may feel strange at first, but it is a powerful way to regain control of your thoughts. Imagine a life where your mind is your strongest weapon, not your greatest enemy. A life where, instead of breaking yourself down, you build yourself up with every challenge you face. That power is already within you. You just need to speak it into existence. So the next time doubt creeps in, stop, take a breath, and remind yourself, "I am in control of the words I choose to believe." 10. Embracing stillness. It was 4:30 a.m. and the city was still asleep. Daniel sat on a park bench, the cool morning air brushing against his skin. His phone, usually glued to his hand, lay untouched in his pocket. No notifications, no distractions, just the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and his own steady breathing. For the first time in months, his mind wasn't racing. The pressure, the deadlines, the chaos of daily life. It was still there, but for these few moments, it didn't control him. In the silence, he found something he hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. Most people run from silence. They drown themselves in noise, scrolling endlessly, filling every moment with stimulation, afraid to be alone with their own thoughts. But what if stillness wasn't something to fear, but rather the key to true strength? Our world constantly demands our attention, pulling us in 100 different directions. We mistake movement for progress, busyness for productivity, and in doing so, we lose touch with the one thing that truly matters: our ability to think clearly. The Stoics understood that wisdom does not arise from constant action, but from the ability to pause and reflect. Seneca wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Letters to Lucilius. True strength is not found in reacting to everything that happens, but in having the discipline to step back and respond with intention. The mind, like a lake, becomes clouded when disturbed by endless movement. Only when it is still do we see clearly. So how do you cultivate stillness in a world addicted to noise? First, carve out moments of silence daily. It doesn't have to be an hour. It could be 5 minutes in the morning before checking your phone, or a quiet walk without distractions. Second, practice solitude. Spend time alone, not in loneliness, but in reflection. Ask yourself, what am I thinking? What emotions am I feeling? What truly matters to me? Third, embrace discomfort. At first, silence will feel unnatural. Your mind will resist, searching for stimulation. But stay with it. Over time, you'll realize that the greatest insights come not when you are overwhelmed, but when you allow space for them to emerge. Imagine a life where your thoughts are no longer hijacked by noise, where you move through life with a sense of calm that no chaos can shake. That life begins the moment you choose to sit with yourself in silence and listen, not to the world, but to the wisdom within. 11th, avoiding negative energy. James walked into the office, feeling drained before the day had even begun. It wasn't the workload that exhausted him, it was the people. His co-worker, always complaining about how unfair life was. His manager, constantly finding faults instead of solutions. Even during lunch, conversations revolved around problems, gossip, and everything wrong with the world. By the time he got home, he felt heavier, burdened by emotions that weren't even his. It took him months to realize something powerful. His energy wasn't being drained by work itself, but by the negativity surrounding him. Negativity is contagious. Just like a virus, it spreads from person to person, embedding itself in your thoughts, shaping your emotions, and altering your perception of reality. The more you expose yourself to constant complaints, pessimism, and toxic behavior, the more you absorb it. And the worst part, most people don't even realize it's happening. They believe they're just listening or being polite. But in reality, they are allowing negativity to take root in their own minds. The Stoics understood the power of guarding one's inner world. Seneca once warned, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." Letters to Lucilius. Your environment influences your mindset far more than you think. If you constantly surround yourself with negative people, you will start seeing life through their lens. But if you surround yourself with those who challenge, inspire, and push you forward, you'll find yourself naturally becoming stronger, more optimistic, and more resilient. So how do you protect yourself from negative energy? First, identify the sources. Who or what is draining you? Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with certain people, consuming certain media, or engaging in certain activities. Second, set boundaries. You don't have to cut people off entirely, but you do have to limit your exposure to their negativity. If a conversation turns toxic, redirect it. If someone constantly drains your energy, spend less time around them. Third, counter negativity with intentional positivity. Read books that uplift you. Listen to people who inspire you. Engage in activities that bring you joy and perspective. Imagine living a life where your energy isn't hijacked by negativity, where you wake up feeling light, unburdened, and focused, where you surround yourself with people who challenge you to grow instead of pulling you down. That life is within your reach. It begins the moment you take control of what you allow into your mind. The world is full of negativity, but you don't have to let it define you. You get to choose what you absorb, what you engage with, and ultimately who you become. 12. Cultivating inner happiness. There is a common mistake people make in their pursuit of happiness. They expect it to come from others. They believe a loving relationship, admiration from friends, or validation from society will finally make them feel whole. But time and time again, they are left disappointed. The moment a person they relied on leaves or an expectation goes unmet, their happiness crumbles. the harsh truth. If your happiness depends on someone else, it was never truly yours to begin with. A woman sits alone in a quiet cafe, staring at the empty seat across from her. It was supposed to be a date. She had given everything to this relationship, invested time, love, and effort, only to be left waiting, unanswered messages piling up. Her mind races. Was I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? The pain is real, but beneath it lies a dangerous belief that her happiness was in someone else's hands. This is where many people fall into emotional weakness. They attach their well-being to external forces, people, circumstances, approval, forgetting that all of these things are temporary, fragile, and ultimately outside of their control. A Stoic, however, understands that happiness is self-generated, self-maintained, and self-protected. It is never placed in the hands of another. Epictetus, a philosopher born into slavery, knew this better than anyone. Despite having no control over his early life, he mastered his mind, stating, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Discourses. If you allow another person to dictate your happiness, you are handing them the keys to your emotional well-being. You are making them the master of your peace. But what happens when they walk away? What happens when life changes, as it inevitably will? The strongest people take full ownership of their happiness. They build it from within through self-respect, purpose, and a deep understanding that no one owes them joy. This doesn't mean avoiding love or relationships. It means approaching them with a different mindset. Instead of, "I need them to make me happy," it becomes, "I am already whole, and anyone in my life is a bonus, not a necessity." So how do you cultivate this? You start by focusing on what brings you joy independently. Your passions, your growth, your values. You stop waiting for someone to choose you, and instead, you choose yourself. You become the source of your own fulfillment, and when you do, something incredible happens. You stop fearing loss. You stop chasing people who don't value you. You stop feeling empty when someone leaves, because you are no longer looking outward for something that was always meant to come from within. This is the final step in emotional strength, the realization that your happiness is your responsibility, and no one, not a lover, a friend, or the world itself, can take that from you. The journey to emotional strength is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be invincible. It is about mastering yourself, understanding your reactions, embracing challenges, and building resilience from within. The ancient Stoics did not promise an easy life, but they did offer a powerful one, a life where external chaos no longer dictates inner peace. If you've made it this far, you already know the truth. Your mind is your strongest weapon. Each of these 12 habits is a step toward unshakable emotional power. But knowledge alone is not enough. Action is what transforms you. Which of these habits resonated with you the most? Have you ever faced a moment where emotional strength changed your path? Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more wisdom on mastering life through Stoicism. As Seneca wisely said, "While we teach, we learn." The best way to solidify these lessons is to discuss them, reflect on them, and pass them forward. Now, I leave you with a question. What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the way you choose to think? Take control. The journey is yours.